Good morning. My name is Stephen Crow. This is FTH 212 51. Let's see. It's the part I always forget. 51915. This is the final assignment for the Striker Fired course with the PSA Dagger. So first thing I'll do is check safe, physical, and visual inspection. Nothing in the mag well. Got no ammo on my workbench here. So overall health of the firearm, areas that we would check, and I've actually already made a couple of modifications to this, and one of them is proving to be problematic, so I've got to take it apart and diagnose what's going on. The trigger is sticking upon reset, but only if I rack the slide back from the rear, not if I rack it back from the front, so that makes me think that there is something with the internal trigger bar and the way that the slide's interacting with that. Something's just not catching correctly. Anyway, health of the firearm though, so areas that we would check for the cycle of operations, checking to make sure that the magazine is able to feed correctly, checking on the feed ramp to make sure that the ammunition, when it's stripped from the magazine, loads properly into the chamber. Outside, checking the ejector to look at and make sure that it's able to actually grab on and eject around as it's needed to. Those are the general health areas that you could look at without taking it apart. To take it apart and look at more general health areas, you could check out your recoil spring real easily. Pull this out, check out your barrel, make sure that the end of your barrel isn't getting messed up. Check the chamber, check the feed ramp. Really overall cleanliness there. I mean, for the most part, these Striker fireds are a lot easier to check out and diagnose now that I've taken it apart and put it together several times. There's just so few parts that are going to be on the outside of this slide here that are going to run into some issues, mainly because everything's tucked in so well inside the slide, which is very different from working on other firearms. Getting into the frame though, I mean, this is where, a lot of wear and tear I feel could happen just because these parts are thin. The loading block's not thin, but your slide catch, I mean, that's just such a thin piece there. Trigger bar, this whole trigger housing group back here, especially with part of it being plastic. I mean, I would definitely check on stuff like that. Go ahead and throw this back together. Get into the list of 10 things that I learned. First was proper installation of all the parts. I've never put a Glock together before. I've only put like a SIG P320 together before. I didn't know that on the inside that some of these parts, especially like those liners and stuff like that, the channel liners, that those are plastic. I just wasn't expecting that. Like the trigger housing group on the inside, I know the frame is polymer, but some of the internal parts I didn't know that they were going to be plastic. Glock specific tools would be the third point. I actually already bought a kit because now that I've got this one, I plan on getting some more if I can find it. I think it's right here. So bought a kit, sight pusher, let's see if you can see it on the box, sight pusher, and then a whole varied amount of Glock hand tools. I just feel like that's going to come in useful, and it's a universal sight pusher anyway, so excited to have that. I didn't know for the fourth one how big the Glock Gen 3 specifically. I know that Glock has a lot of aftermarket parts, but I guess the Glock Gen 3, with its popularity, how many they sold whenever the patents came up on these individual parts, how big the aftermarket community for them got, which makes sense because they sold so many. I mean, that really makes sense. You've got your polymer 80s, you've got Shadow Systems, PSA. Everyone's making a variant of this now and kind of improving upon it. And some of the improvements I really like PSA has this bigger beaver tail. The frame is a little bit more ergonomic, and I like that. For number 5, and this kind of goes with number 1, but once you put everything together, it's easier to visualize how the cycle of operation works and how these parts interplay with each other, and it's really good to learn that. The sixth, patience with parts. I've changed a few things on here already. One of the first things I changed was the rear plate cover. I got an aluminum piece because whenever I was taking it apart with the polymer one, I couldn't really get it out with just some thumb pressure, so I said, well, there's a little hole here, I'll push my flat screwdriver in there to help me get it down, and it marred the entire piece, and I said, oh no. So I replaced it, and that was my fault because I had just got a little bit too impatient with getting that rear plate cover off after I had it in there. Number 7, and this kind of goes with the aftermarket part, but there was so many differences between the Glocks and then their clone variants, and like the big one I talked about was like the beaver tail that's on this frame. I really like that one. Sight pushing without a sight tool can be rather difficult if you've not done it before. I've got some really good brass punches versus steel ones, and even then there was a couple of little brass marks on the side of this slide and the side of this sight, so I think I would have preferred to use a sight pushing tool, which is why I bought it. Number 9, how to stipple. I had never done that before. I've seen it done with lasers predominantly, but I've never done it by hand myself. And then the 10th thing, how much stippling actually helps. I kind of went to town on this thing. I got the grip panels, sides, front, back, and then I further did stippling around the takedown area and the entire trigger housing group. So I kind of went to town on it, but I like it. It looks different. I think it's functional. Things that I would change, or parts that I want to put on. So one of them got sent for the hammer fired course, which is kind of cool, but I really do want to put a Strike Industries mass driver compensator on this, and I probably will pretty shortly after. I bought the Tyrant weapon systems, the pins versus the roll pins. These are awesome. They push right in. Don't have to use any tools or anything like that. Got a Magwell. Gotta look and see who I got that through. It wasn't a traditional company. It was like HG or H. I'd have to look. Works really well though. It cycles Glock mags, Magwell mags. I bought like 5 or 6 different mags just to try them out, and it cycles all of them just fine. And then I bought a Tyrant Weapon Systems trigger. It's the ITTS trigger. It's supposed to be able to fix some of that that slack that's in here that makes the trigger feel kind of mushy, and for the most part it does, but like I said, it's kind of having a hard time resetting. And then that rear plate cover using that aluminum piece. It did not take long to put any of these in. I mean, I literally took the gun apart, grabbed the new parts, put the new parts in, and that was it. I mean, this Magwell took a little bit of time just because I had to line up that hole really well, but I mean, a little bit of time, I'm talking like 2 minutes. I wanted these modifications just because I plan on carrying this, and like I said with the rear plate cover, I marred it up a little bit anyway, so that needed to be replaced for aesthetic reasons. But for the most part, I plan on carrying this, so I want to make it how I want it. The cost of those materials, I mean, it was roughly like 180 is what I've spent altogether so far, so not much. With a mass driver, it'll be 280. For putting these parts on, I would not charge very much money at all. I mean, $100 to put all the parts on. It's literally just a disassemble and swapping in new parts. Just in my looking and going to these gun shops personally, there's a couple that I would go to where they're veteran owned, like, that they would work with whoever, and especially if it's just swapping in some new parts, $100 and they'd knock all that out, I'm sure. They're pretty pretty good dudes. But some of the other places that are a little bigger, more established, not veteran owned, they're like family owned businesses that have been here forever, and they kind of run the gun market here. I mean, they're expensive. I'd have to go check with them and see. I don't make it a habit to go in their store because everything's so overpriced. It's just not even realistic to shop there for me, especially because I buy things in bulk. I'm not buying one thing at a time, so it's just kind of how I feel about that, though. So anyway, thank you very much. Great class, and look forward to getting on to hammer fired. Thank you.